The Gauteng Department of Education says all schools are set to reopen come Monday. The department says all affected parties, including teacher unions, are on board with this reopening. However, more than 30,000 pupils, we're told, are yet to be placed. For perspective and clarity, let's bring in Gauteng Education Department's spokesperson, Steve Mabona, who joins us now via our video line. Steve, great to have you on the program. Thanks so much for making time. Let's begin perhaps with the clarity around how many pupils have or haven't been placed. During the briefing yesterday, the Coronavirus Command Council in Gauteng's briefing, the MEC spoke of two figures, right? There is the figure of, I think it's over 30,000 students who haven't been placed. And our understanding is because not all the documents had been provided. And then later on, there was a conversation about 2,000 pupils who haven't been placed for whatever other reason. Help us navigate those two figures.
Well, thank you very much, Ayanda. We need to clarify that. Remember, when we opened the system in June, July, we then said out of all the applications that we've received, then there's about 30,000 odd parents who could not submit documents. But when we started with the process of placing those that had applied and they've uploaded documents, we then, gave those who didn't submit documents some time to do so at the later stage, because we had to place and make sure that we continue with that process. At the later stage, we then interacted with some of those that did not submit documents to say they now need to do that. And we've been placing, those that we've been placing, we gave them space. Some who did not submit documents, probably they don't have an interest of getting space in our schools, or some they opted to take alternative schools. So that figure of over 30,000, it was then when we were opening the system, that's the number that was actually reflected. That's why at the later stage, MEC then spoke about the over 2,000, number. But I can assure you that that number is now reduced because the briefing was in the morning. Now, our officials continue to work under severe pressure, which we need to thank them. And they then reduced the number. We are talking now about 1,500 of those that we still need to place. But we are interacting with parents, making sure that we give them an alternative, because we are saying to parents, if the school cannot give you space, it means it's full, and we're not going to be in a position to overcrowd schools, because then we need to place. But we have an issue of capacity, which we have acknowledged. And we continue to work with parents and make sure that we place them.
Right. Any idea what happens with pupils who aren't placed by Monday? It's a bit of a weird question because you can't really answer it until Monday happens. But is there a plan about what would happen to those, I imagine, few hundred pupils who still wouldn't have a place in the next 48 hours?
Well, because it's going to be probably a lesser number. We are in a position to interact with them. And they will be visiting some of our districts. We know some of them come to our head office, which is not ideal because of the conditions that we find ourselves in. But we do assist them and encourage them to use our call center, because the numbers are now going so down. The call center will be in a position to manage anyone that will call there. 0800 000 789. 0800 000 789. They will then be accommodated there. But then we also have those that have not applied. We still have those that have not utilized the opportunity of late registration when we opened in December. So we must also accommodate those. Those, we are saying, they need to go to the districts and
Apologize to our audience. It looks like we are losing our connection to Steve Mabona. He speaks for the Basic Education Department here in Gauteng. Steve, I'm hoping that the connectivity will bear with us for a little while longer. The MEC also spoke yesterday about the number of teachers who've been lost to the pandemic, I imagine, amongst many other issues. How much of a problem is this? The number that we were told about was just about 34,000 odd. That's pretty significant in a context where you're facing constraints.
Indeed, but we have a database of educators that will be saying we need employment, districts and schools will tap into that database and fill in those posts. We have about 65,000 educators in Gauteng. So 34 and the 39 that they have already applied for working at home, we need to then replace those.
There's also unions, according to some reports, that are still worried at this late stage about PPE procurement. Granted, the report that they released is looking at the country as a whole. How much of a problem do you feel this still is for Gauteng?
No, well, for Gauteng, we don't have that problem. We have already assured and we have already indicated that when we look into our system, we have been interacting with our schools, our stakeholders on the ground. They've been going to those schools to check for themselves. And we are quite sure that when coming to PPE and all necessary, learning material that is needed, we don't have a challenge in Gauteng. Actually, that's why MEC said we are ready. And we got a green light from our stakeholders to say, yes, indeed, as Gauteng, we are ready.
Fair enough. Of course, the dark cloud hanging over the Gauteng Education Department has to do with that more than 400 million rand that was spent on deep cleaning and sanitizing schools, etc., etc. A lot has been said. What are you able to share with us today about how far the investigations are and, more importantly, who has been held accountable?
Well, indeed. I mean, MEC has already indicated that the SIU has started with that process. They have interacted with all relevant officials, and we will then have to give them space to give us an outcome on what is it that they found. But indeed, MEC has already indicated that they take this matter serious, and anyone who might be involved in any of the probably activities that were not supposed to happen, then the necessary action will be taken. But yes, we will be guided by what SIU has, and we should be in a position to know on the future announcement.
Right, and with that, our sound appears to be faulting. Perhaps a good time to thank you for making time to chat to us. Steve Mabona is with the Basic Education Department in Gauteng.